Hi everyone, I'm Sam Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yakker. My guest on today's show is Kelly Spencer. I'll be yakking with her about the paranormal side of one of the loveliest areas in the province of Ontario, Canada, that being the Waterloo Region. Kelly Spencer, welcome to Paranormal Yakker.
Thanks, Stan. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
True Nature Communications, a company you're co-owner of, has been contracted by the Culture and Heritage Department of the region of Waterloo to promote their Doors Open program. For those who may not be familiar with the Waterloo region, can you tell me something about it and the mission of the Doors Open program?
Waterloo Region is comprised of 3 cities and 4 townships in southwestern Ontario. It's one of the fastest growing regions in Canada. I think we're probably best known as a small Silicon Valley. It's a major tech hub. It is, as you alluded to, just a beautiful area, really rich heritage and culture, and stunning natural beauty as well. The Doors Open program has been around 2003. This is a provincial program. Your Ontario viewers will probably be familiar with the Doors Open program somewhere in their area. It's a provincial program which municipalities opt into. Waterloo Region has been a part of it since 2003. It's basically the opportunity for people to go in on one specific day, and there are places that are open to the public, which many times are not typically open to the public. So it's an opportunity to get in and see all kinds of different buildings and spaces and spots, to be greeted there by the people who are informed about it or work there, or it's their place. It's been very popular, as you can imagine. We were contracted in 2020 to take over the program, and then the pandemic hit and we had to reconfigure things and figure things out. Obviously, there wouldn't be 20 sites for people to go into that September. So we pivoted, as many companies have done during this pandemic, and we turned it into a digital event. In 2020, we produced 16 video episodes. And this past year, we produced 9. So we have a total of 25 episodes, and they take you everywhere. It has been a bit of a blessing for the program, because it's really allowed us to execute that mandate to let people see inside spaces they couldn't normally access. So we've been able to take people into places they wouldn't be able to access during a traditional Doors Open event. Probably the best example of that was our most popular video to date, which was Parkview Crematorium. So the ability to actually go into a crematorium and see one in operation and have the operator tell you about it and explain what happened, and to see all the operations is obviously something the public could never access on scale. So it's really been very positively received. We've had a lot of fun doing the episodes. They really run a huge gamut of culture, heritage, operation, just infrastructure places, just all kinds of really fun stuff. But the most popular one to date, as I said, was from 2020, the crematorium. And the one I assume we're probably going to talk about most is our 2021 episode, which is the most popular from this year by far, which is a cemetery driving tour, which actually takes people to 4 heritage cemeteries and tells a story at each one of those cemeteries. And all of the stories are from the 800s. Very fascinating.
Castle Kilbride is a grand Victorian home that has been designated a National Historic Site. There have been numerous sightings of ghosts and other paranormal activity taking place at it. One of the most intriguing was a supernatural encounter that occurred in the bedroom of the owner. Can you share that encounter?
This has a fairly riveting backstory as well, a personal backstory for me. When we decided to produce, I'll take you sort of behind the scenes first of the production of the episode. When we came up with the idea for the episode, it's a bit of a departure from our other episodes. Most of the episodes focus on an interview. That is obviously not possible with this particular episode. There's obviously no interviews in this. It's really heavily researched, and then there's a voiceover that tells the stories and take these different cemeteries. We launched this thinking, we came up with the idea. I had one idea to kick us off, and that was, as you said, James Livingston. He was the founder of Castle Kilbride, which is a totally majestic heritage site in one of the townships of Waterloo Region. He built that. He came from Scotland. He built the castle in 1877, when sort of at the height of his success as a magnet, flax and linseed. He built the castle in 1877. It was a majestic house. It continued in the family for another 2 generations, and then then it fell into disrepair in the 1970s, 1980s. It's a huge house, and of course, the upkeep on it is tremendous. It just fell to the point where the family couldn't maintain it anymore. They offered it to the municipality, the township, to take over, and they passed on it at the time. And so they auctioned off all of the items in the house and the house. And this was in the 80s. I think there were 5,000 people there to bid and take away these amazing items. The Livingstons traveled extensively throughout the world, and they brought back items from their travels. So the house itself was amazing, but the items in it were also incredible. All of the items were auctioned off. The house itself was auctioned off. There was plans to redevelop the home. Those fell through. And then eventually the home was then purchased by the municipality with the end goal to restore it to its original beauty. So during that time, this ages me fairly significantly. I was a journalism student at the local college. For my final project, I decided to write a magazine article about the restoration of the home. Just at that time, the home was just about to reopen public. There was a lot of fanfare, and it was being deemed a National Historic Site, etc. So that was my goal. That was my angle, just to write a very vanilla piece about all that had been happening. One of my first interviews with a woman who had been a housekeeper in the home for many, many years. She quite happily shared with me some of the lesser known ghost tales. And as you said, there are many ghost tales surrounding Castle Kilbride. But this one was one I had not heard before. Being the young, intrepid student reporter that I was, I jumped on the trail. And so she had told me that there had always been some questions around the bed, the master bed, the original bed of the founder. And of course, during these times, people died at home, right? They didn't die in hospitals in the 1800s. They died at home. She put me in touch with the local antique dealer who had been responsible for facilitating some of these sales of the items, both when they went on auction during that day that I talked about, when the auction drew a crowd of 5,000. And then that same antique dealer was also helpful in bringing back a lot of the items as well once the restoration came into effect. And so the master bed in the master bedroom had been auctioned off, but it had come back to the castle and is in the castle today because the buyers, who were, according to the antique dealer, were a professional couple from Toronto, and they had bought the bed, and it is, of course, a beautiful, majestic, really a work of art in itself. But they had quite promptly contacted him and said, please remove this bed, just take it. We don't want you to buy it back, just would like for you to take it back to the castle, because every night we see this man in period dress at our bed and we can't handle it anymore. So that is how the bed came back to be at the castle. That is one of the lesser known ghost stories I had never heard except for the antique dealer, the former maid. That kind of kicked off our episode, and from there we thought, would there be 3 more intriguing cemetery tales in the region of Waterloo? We dug into it, and we quite quickly found 3 more very interesting, perhaps less paranormal angle, but certainly weird and wonderful and macabre. Some of them are very not wonderful, but we can go through those as well if you like.
Rush's Cemetery is a typical pioneer cemetery with an atypical attraction. Established in 1852, the rural graveyard has been sought out by historians, linguists, and code crackers since the addition of its most infamous stone, dubbed the Bean Puzzle. Can you elaborate on that stone and what draws so many people to it?
It is very fascinating. In fact, I have lived in the region all my life and did not know about this puzzle. But as you said, many, many people do. It draws people literally from all around the world. The local historical society in Wellesley actually had to create a replica of the tombstone and place it beside it, because a lot of people come and do rubbings and that sort of thing. So it's actually eroded the original over time. But the original it's a 225 alphanumeric code. You have to break the code to understand what it says. This puzzle tombstone, beneath it is buried not just 1, but 2 of the wives of Samuel Bean. Samuel Bean was a local resident in the 1800s. He married 2 women, both of whom died under fairly suspect circumstances. He then buried both of them under this epitaph that he had constructed and offered no explanation as to what the code was, and then died. No one knew the code. So the groundskeeper apparently cracked the code in 1942, but refused to share it with anyone. And then a 90-year-old resident in the 70s, she also cracked it, and she did share it. So it has been publicly available since the 70s. And in our episode, we actually take the viewer through the solution. It has elicited a lot of speculation about what sort of frame of mind a person has to be in to erect this sort of epitaph and to bury two women beneath it. It's fairly narcissistic. I think that's probably fair to say. But some people view Samuel Bean not as a narcissist and more as, this is such a very romantic gesture. I personally don't see it that way, but everyone is definitely entitled to their opinion.
Buried at the Trinity Anglican Church Cemetery is Meta, the 3-year-old daughter of a prominent mill owner. Her demise was investigated by Ontario's first full-time criminal detective, John Wilson Murray, whose memoirs inspired the award-winning TV series Murdoch Mysteries. What were his findings regarding Meta's death?
He was unfortunately, not able to solve it. She was not quite 3 at the time. This was in the early 1800s. As you said, she was the daughter of a prominent mill owner. They received a package of chocolates in the mail through the local mail, Galt, Cambridge. Being a toddler, she promptly got into that package, as most toddlers would, and ingested a bunch of the chocolate drop and then promptly died. When they brought in the investigator, he determined that they had been injected with strychnine. There were other prominent families who received these same packages through the mail, and some of them did eat the chocolate drops and did become sick, but no one else passed away. They assumed it was because Meta was so young that the strychnine killed her so promptly. They were never able to actually solve the case, and this apparently really haunted him until the last of his days. He was a very celebrated investigator, but was never able to make a finite finding in the case, although they did have a couple of pretty solid suspects, and he did say that he was pretty sure he knew who the perpetrator was, but never had enough evidence to solve it. So it's when you go to this cemetery, it's very sad. Like she's buried in a family plot. They were a very prominent family, so they have a very prominent setup for their family plot. They're all long gone. This was the 1800s, and the actual lettering on her portion of the tombstone is starting to fall away, and it's such a tragic story, and to actually visit the cemetery where she's buried, it's just very somber and very sad.
The first Mennonite church and cemetery is the burial site of many pioneer leaders. It is also the site where body snatchers did their dirty deeds. Could you tell me some of the famous people who are buried there, why bodies were snatched, and how the perpetrators were caught?
Well, this is a very fascinating story, and I have to give credit to one of our local historians. She calls herself a social historian. I think she's more like a social historian warrior. She loves to tell the stories of everyday people and sort of the fringe stories as well. So that's Joanna Rickard Hall. I'm going to give her a quick plug here because she does such fabulous work and really digs into some of the areas that you and I are fascinated in. And so she has a book called The Waterloo You Never Knew, Life on the Margin. She has this story of Dr. Friedrich Christ, who is the body snatcher that you're talking about. The setup is that in this first Mennonite church, it was the first church in this area, built by the earliest founders, has some of the most prominent founders in its cemetery. All of our street names, you'll find all of those people in this church. The man who actually built the church is Bishop Benjamin Eby. He is also, the area was first named for him, Eby Town, then it became Berlin, and then it became Kitchener. He had a grandson who in the mid-1850s was 5 years old at the time, and his name was Edward. He died in a very tragic accident during a church picnic. He was buried at the cemetery, and then 3 weeks later, his body disappeared. This character who was a doctor, and I put those in air quotes, Dr. Friedrich Chris. He had a farm and a workshop kind of on the outskirts of the city, or what was the city at the time. He was, in fact, robbing graves. He had an accomplice from the nearby village of Elmira. They were robbing graves with the intention of boiling down the remains to get to skeleton, and then they would sell the skeletons. And this was a booming trade in the 1800s all across North America, in that medical schools, needed skeletal remains in order to conduct their teaching and body. This was an underground economy that was really booming and was happening here in Waterloo Region as well. So he also had a bit of a problem with liquor and a fairly loose tongue. As most people know, those don't go hand in hand very well. So he was at the local tavern one night, basically boasted to the people at the tavern that he, in fact, was the one responsible for this body of young Edward disappearing. The authorities arrived at his workshop/farm, quickly discovered Edward's body and bodies of several more. We don't know numbers. We don't know what was remaining of young Edward's body. We don't know what happened to his body either, if he was later reburied at the First Mennonite Church or not, because no grave marker exists and no written record exists of what eventually happened to him. But yes, a very grisly tale from the dark underbelly of Waterloo Region. This was a practice that was widespread throughout North America during that time.
The Kitchener home of acclaimed artist Homer Watson, which is now an art gallery, is reportedly one of the most haunted residents in Canada. A number of ghost hunts and seances have taken place there. Did you, Kelly, ever go to any of those ghost hunts or sit in on a seance?
I have been to the Homer Watson Gallery several times. It is a beautiful place. These places are hard to maintain. They require a lot of funding. You're always fighting for funding. You're always trying to come up with original ideas to reach new audiences and to remain relevant, to execute on your mandate. The staff there at Homer Watson Gallery have really, I think, done for someone who's obviously interested in these stories and has a fascination with paranormal and what they can do to enhance our storytelling. I find it really fascinating how they have really embraced this notion of Homer Watson's love of divination and spirituality. They've really embraced it and brought it into their fundraising. So around Halloween, they have just a host of great activities, as you said, seance soirees and tarot reading, ghost hunting sessions. And of course, all of that money raised goes toward maintaining their facility and their programming. I think it's fascinating when people really reach out into the paranormal with varying degrees of trepidation. This is more of a mainstream storytelling mechanism now, which I personally think is fantastic. I think it's obvious, just based on our own findings with our own episodes, as I said earlier, that the crematorium episode and this episode about the graveyard are the two most popular out of all 25. And I think they're all great episodes and have lots to offer. But there's obviously something that places like the Homer Watson Gallery and other places are really hitting on, that as a storytelling mechanism, the paranormal angle is really effective.
William Lyon McKenzie King, a former Canadian Prime Minister, was born in Kitchener and was very much into spiritualism and the occult. In fact, he facilitated many seances to connect with his past mother and sister. Do you know if he succeeded in making contact with any of his deceased relatives?
As a youngster growing up in Waterloo Region, this was kind of one of those wacky days in history class when we would cover local history and we would all giggle about how the local former prime minister was a wacko. That's how we would refer to him back in the day. I obviously have a much more nuanced understanding of the paranormal now than I did when I was in my early teens. He was actually a contemporary of Homer Watson, and they kind of palled together on their divination journeys. But this is, something that's widely known, and I don't know a ton about it, but certainly I do know that when you Google his name or pull up his Wikipedia page, it will be played there promptly. He really had, it's a bit of a sad tale too. I think he had a real affection for his mother and his sister, that he felt a bit abandoned by them. I think looking back now, as a teenager who kind of laughed at it, I feel a little remorseful about that, because it probably underscores a rather rather sad tale.
If there are any sites in the Waterloo region that have been purported to have experienced paranormal activity, which were not covered in our interview, could you, Kelly, tell me about them?
During the course of filming the graveyard episode and last year filming the crematorium episode, I did not feel any sense of creep or strange sensation or anything like that. But we did film an episode as well this year about Kitchener's Cold War bunker. Kitchener actually has a bunker that they built in 1966, which obviously, thankfully, we never had to use. But it is underground. It has fallen into disrepair, and our municipality is actually just right at this very moment sort of determining what the fate of this space will be, because it's obviously a very unique space, but it's not being used anymore, and they're at real crossroads where they have to determine whether they're going to just destroy it or restore it. We filmed this space. There is no hydro. It is underground. It has fallen into all the different kinds of disrepair that you can imagine. It's interesting because we obviously equate paranormal occurrences with tragedy. Someone has died there. This is the precursor for the creep. This is not a place where anyone died, but it is a place where, had it been used, it would have been because many people had died. When we were filming that space, it was very hot. We were in respirators, full suit. It was very trying and a very difficult shoot. We were alone, just the two of us, sort of wandering through this very strange space. We had a moment where I said through the respirator, "Oh my goodness, I feel like Blair Witch is going to like jump out from around the corner at any moment." It feels very strange down here. I think that is a good indication of, and that too obviously is a very popular episode in our current season as well. But I think it shows that it's not necessarily the history of the place, paranormally magical. I think it's where your imagination can take you as well.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to learn more about Waterloo's Doors Open program, the various historic and cultural sites they can explore in the region, including, of course, the paranormal experiences waiting for them when they visit, what is the contact information for finding that out?
For all of our Doors Open episodes, probably the easiest way to find them is to just go into YouTube and just search for Doors Open Waterloo Region, and that'll take you right to the playlist. There'll be 25 episodes for you right there. If you want to explore more about Homer Watson and Woodside National Park for the former Prime Minister, just search for Homer Watson Gallery and Woodside National, both of those in Kitchener.
Kelly Spencer, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. Your knowledge of the Waterloo region is amazing. I very much appreciate you sharing that knowledge with my viewers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's really my pleasure. Thanks, Stan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. To be sure you don't miss any interviews on my free YouTube channel, all you have to do is press the subscribe button on your screen.